Hey everyone, Brandon Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me. So I am actually on my way to a record store in Amityville, New York, but I just learned that guitarist Rick Derringer has passed away at 77, and pretty much at standstill traffic here, so I did want to give my thoughts and remember him as what an amazing guitarist he was in many different styles that he did. And while I don't have all the years and things at my fingertips to discuss as I normally do when I do these sorts of videos, these remembrance videos and topics on these great artists, I did want to talk about the variety of what this guy could play. I mean, he did everything from teen bubble pop songs, back in the day, Hang On Sloopy and all kinds of different stuff, all the way up to the gritty hard rock of the 70s into straight up blues. He did jazz, and it's just a pretty amazing thing, much like an artist like Gary Moore, who had many different styles that he could play as well. And so for these artists to do what they do, you know, they could choose to stay on a particular thing that makes them very successful. When he had his band Derringer, right? He could have just stayed doing that sort of music the whole way through. And in a lot of cases, that stuff would make these artists way bigger than they are probably at this point, or at least able to have a niche to fall back into. Gary Moore, when he passed, or before he passed, kind of fell back into the blues. Rick Derringer, while still doing rock and things of that nature, there was a period of time where he decided to explore other things. Remember, he did jazzy coo, you know, hoochie coo, but in a jazz style. And it was actually really interesting to hear some of his songs reinterpreted in that manner. And I respect artists that like to do that sort of thing. But when they do that stuff, does it alienate their fan base? Does it push them aside because it's not a style that the average fan that was into Rick Derringer, whether the various artists he would back him up, you know, Edgar Winter and different people of that nature that he played with along the way, most famous probably as a solo artist for what he did, but not really having one niche to fall back into. And I always wonder about that. Now, granted, I don't think any artist should ever have to stick with one thing, do one thing, you know, not be able to explore. Certainly they absolutely should. And, you know, we come along for the journey that is these guys, right? It's their journey, it's their style of music, it's what's in their minds, hearts, souls, whatever you want to call it, that we are coming along for the ride on. And so there's a lot of artists that are like that, you know, for me, where artists like Alice Cooper, David Bowie, trying to think of some of the other ones that have a lot of changes and styles throughout their careers. And in some cases it really works. Certainly David Bowie, he was a chameleon. He could move between different styles and it didn't, you know, take away anything. And it was amazing what that guy could do under any style given. He was just a creative genius when it came to, you know, morphing and fitting into those styles. And so, you know, other artists, Alice Cooper, who's still around today, who's still doing it, you know, God bless him. I mean, what was his first album in '69, I think? So he's been kicking around 56, probably 56 plus years, you know, within the music industry and stuff. Those guys starting it when they were in high school. And they're actually back together getting ready to put out an album. I mean, how cool is that? So, you know, artists can certainly morph and change and do the things that they need to do to keep it interesting for them. And I respect that highly, until certain artists decide they've got to go way, way outside of their genre. And we recently experienced that with Slash making his blues album. In fact, this coming Friday, we've got the Dead Daisies putting out their blues album, and going back a ways, Aerosmith. And I understand all these artists are built off of the blues. So they're going to be able to, they're saying, well, that's what they love. That's probably what they jam in the interim. I mean, we had Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers make Mojo, a blues album, because they said when they got together in the studio to jam, it wasn't on Tom Petty sounding stuff. That's what they wrote and played. But when they were having a good time, they were jamming on the blues. So they made a blues record, right? It's when they do that, and it is the length of time that it takes, and for some of these artists, it's a long time between albums, and you get that, and then it's another 7-8 years till we get another one after that. Little Feat just did Sam's Place last year, 2024, a blues album. And at the time when they put that out, it had been years and years and years since we got new original material from Little Feat. Now, they didn't tell us at the time that they would turn around and in 2025 drop their brand new album, I think it's called Let It Roll, but whatever it's called, the new album from 2025 is so good, and it is a classic return to their New Orleans rock, gumbo style music that they do. And if I had known that, I wouldn't have been so disappointed with Sam's Place, which is too deep into the blues for me. They also had their percussionist Sam Clayton sing, which is not typical, right? So artists that like that do it and then immediately move back to their style to reward the fans. It's almost as those albums are just, stopgap albums. And I get that. It's kind of like a covers album. It's a live album, and it's something that is bonus to the fans, at least the way I look at it. But for it to be the album that you put out, that you're doing, and again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I know there are a lot of you guys out there that really enjoyed Slash's last album, the blues album. Probably enjoyed a lot of the albums that I'm talking about here that for me didn't do anything for me. I am the fan of these artists and the way that they sound. So Gary Moore, yes, but certainly Rick Derringer. These are artists that I got into after the fact. I didn't grow up with these artists. And in most cases, they had already slowed down, weren't putting out albums and things. So I was never part of the release of a new album for these guys. Not really anyways. I mean, by the time they were doing what they were doing, Gary had returned to the blues. Rick Derringer was off doing his blues and jazz and other stuff. And I actually don't know that Rick Derringer ever put a rock album out post early 90s, maybe not even up to that late. The stuff that I love from him is his 70s era stuff, the Derringer band albums, and some of the stuff that he did shortly thereafter, Guitar and Women, or Women and Guitars, or whatever it was called. There's some really killer stuff back from that era of him that I really, really enjoy. And so as a fan, I got into that sort of stuff. And then, you enjoy that, you hear it on the radio, you know what that sort of stuff is, and you see that artist is putting out a brand new album. You get very excited about it, at least I do. I love new stuff. I want my artist to put out new music. I know it'll never be what it once was, but I don't ever want an artist who's out there just touring, playing, not actually creating. And it may come from the fact that I myself, as a creative individual, I'm an architect. If you're new to my channel and you don't know that, so by day, I'm an architect. I do design and create and work with the construction teams to build things in New York City. I live in Jersey, but I commute in, so I work in New York City. I've worked for a particular firm for 22 years. That I've been out of school. I graduated in 2002, and I've been creating stuff ever since. I think that's a big part of it for me, that I have to do that. I don't think I could ever sit back. When I was first out of school and creating, or creating, but I mean working professionally as an architect. And when you're very young, you don't actually get to do the full creation of stuff. So I felt as though my skills, my creation, my creativity, I should say, was not really being peaked, not being fulfilled. So I did some competition work at that time. I began doing photography, painting. I did a lot of recording on 4-track recorders and stuff in the early 2000s, but it was all stuff to fill and get those creative juices flowing and out, and it fulfilled me, right? Even though I wasn't producing or churning any of that stuff out, say professionally or whatever, I have tons of that sort of stuff that I did. And now I've moved into a role where I actually get to do that. I am the senior project architect or whatever. I'm an associate principal at my firm. So I get to make those decisions, and I feel very fulfilled in that role. So some of the other creative things that I used to do have fallen by the wayside, but I am still being creative. And so for me, I don't really get when an artist doesn't need to do that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not doing it. I mean, Eddie Van Halen is a famous person for not recording and putting anything out, and yet we all knew because it had been talked about, and certainly after his passing, we've heard more about it. But he has wall-to-wall tapes of things that he recorded over the years. It's just endless amounts of stuff. It could be a guitar lick, it could be a part of a song, a riff, and it could actually be an entire song in there. Currently Alex, his brother, and his son Wolfgang are going through that stuff. Who knows if and when we will ever see any of it, although we are supposed to see it at some point. So he was staying creative, even though we weren't getting albums from him. So I get that stuff does occur, that even when we're not getting the music, it's still being recorded. But as the music fan, I really want that sort of stuff. And so I always wonder, how it is that an artist can at a certain point sit back and just say they're done. Famous example of this is Henry Rollins of Rollins' band Black Flag, who made albums up through the very early 2000s, maybe even 2002, I can't remember, and stopped. He literally said he woke up one day and thought to himself that he had done it all and had nothing more to say, and that chapter of his life was over and he moved on. Now, this was a guy that was creative in terms of writing books, probably had other creative ventures. He loved to travel, and had gotten into acting in the 90s. Then he was into hosting things, and he has continued in that role of host, making that kind of transition. I think it's amazing. There's a lot of rap artists, Will Smith in particular, the Fresh Prince, who made his shift from music into acting and has been hugely successful at it and continued with it. Common, another, I think he was a rapper, artist that did that has been very popular, and I've seen him in so many different shows that I've been part of. What show was he currently on? An Apple TV show. I'm spacing on it, but man, whatever that show is called, really, really good. So anyways, to bring this thing back full circle, obviously, it's a sad day whenever any artist passes. Rick Derringer passing here at 77. We have other artists, and unfortunately with the time frame that we were within in 2025, lots of artists out of the 60s and 70s are passing almost every day. It's just a common thing. You see me report on it weekly on my Music News Roundup, series that I do. But to bring it back, artists that record and do things, and he continued to do that, but I really hadn't followed him for a very long time. Although really enjoying his music, box sets that would get done. His Derringer years came out in a box set. I had to grab that. Picking up the albums when I could find them. And I'm trying to remember the one that's the vinyl only, as far as I know, never pressed to CD. And I eventually found a copy of it, and really do, have enjoyed that very, very much. So, to wrap this thing up here, obviously it's a sad, announcement. It's a sad day, but also with this discussion here to be, about what it is that artists create and do, and the fact that whether they continue to record or do not record, but they obviously have a legacy. And myself as a music fan for these guys, the ones that I'm fans of, certainly I will support. I do buy those blues albums. None of them have ever clicked with me. And I go back to some of them, like the Aerosmith one, all the time, where there's a song or two that I really dig. And there's some other artists that are the same sort of thing like that. So rest in peace, Rick Derringer. Certainly, you will be remembered. You will not be forgotten. You're going to live on. And most of these amazing artists that we've talked about today are the same thing. And I'm glad to know that there are many of you out there that continue to enjoy their variety of what they put out and what they do, that they can see that there are fans out there that love to go on the journey. And I suppose that is sort of the theme to this. For me, it's all about going on the journey with them through their life, through their creations, through the things that they want to explore. And I get to experience that with them. And for that, I am very thankful.